Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary under the Trump administration, arrived at an upscale gala in Washington, D.C. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers reflected off her modest blue dress, setting her apart in a room filled with extravagance. Born in Atkinson, New Hampshire, and a graduate of St. Anselm College, she remained steadfast in her loyalty to the MAGA movement, a presence that unsettled the predominantly liberal elite in attendance. Democratic donors and progressive artists exchanged wary glances, their silent expressions making it clear she was an outsider in this gathering. Before delving into the story, let us know where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Amid the gentle clinking of wine glasses, Elliot Grayson, a Silicon Valley tech magnate, made his way toward Karoline. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, he embodied the affluent liberal establishment, known for pouring vast sums into climate change initiatives. With a knowing smirk, he gestured toward a magnificent Steinway Model D piano in the corner of the room. His voice carried a distinct air of condescension. "Miss Leavitt, I imagine your expertise lies more in rallying for Trump than in playing a single note. Care to prove me wrong, or would you rather spare MAGA the embarrassment?" Laughter rippled through the room, and a few guests discreetly reached for their phones, eager to capture the unfolding moment. Karoline squared her shoulders, her unwavering gaze locking onto Grayson. She was no stranger to criticism, having faced relentless opposition during congressional campaigns and White House press briefings. Yet his words touched a part of her past she rarely acknowledged. Standing at the center of the grand hall, the glow of chandeliers casting elongated shadows on the polished marble floor, Karoline found herself in the crosshairs of a skeptical audience. The quiet snickers of tuxedo-clad men and elegantly dressed women carried a sharp sting, their judgment palpable. Grayson's smirk deepened as he motioned once more toward the Steinway, its polished ebony surface gleaming under the soft lights. A $500,000 instrument, it seemed to serve as an unspoken symbol of refinement, one he clearly believed she could never command. "Well, Miss Leavitt," he continued, his voice smooth yet taunting, "will you play, or are you afraid of proving what we already suspect? I told you, people like you don't belong in places like this." The crowd buzzed with a mix of claps and murmured anticipation. A man in a gray suit, likely a journalist, raised his phone to record, his eyes glinting as if he had just uncovered a major scoop. Nearby, a woman in a red dress, champagne glass in hand, smirked and whispered to her companion, "She's about to bolt." Heat rushed to Karoline's ears, but she wasn't one to retreat. With the same composure that once led to her being cut off on CNN for challenging a reporter, she stepped forward, her cold blue eyes locking onto Grayson. "You think I'm afraid of you, Grayson?" she shot back, her voice as sharp as a blade, cutting through the room's tension. "If you want to play this game, don't cry when you lose." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience, followed by scattered laughter, though it wasn't clear who the amusement was directed at. Grayson arched an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard by her unwavering defiance. He took a measured sip of red wine, his gaze narrowing like a predator assessing its prey. "Oh, a sharp tongue," he remarked, his tone laced with amusement. "But words are easy. Action is tough. I wonder, beyond reading Trump's pre-written speeches and shouting into a microphone, what else can you do? Or is all of this just a hollow front to mask incompetence?" Turning slightly, he addressed the crowd, raising a hand with theatrical, "See, I told you, MAGA is all talk and no substance." His remark triggered a sharper, colder round of laughter. Karoline clenched her teeth, her grip tightening around the small black clutch in her hand. She had endured countless attacks throughout her career, from her unsuccessful congressional campaign in New Hampshire against Chris Pappas to intense White House press briefings, defending Trump, against relentless questioning. But this was different. Grayson's words weren't just an attack on her political stance. They were a direct assault on her as a person, an unspoken challenge to her presence in this very room. She glanced at the Steinway, and for a brief moment, a memory surfaced. Afternoons, in Atkinson, her fingers gliding effortlessly over an old piano in the music room, friends cheering as she played America the Beautiful. That was a different time, before Fox News, before everything changed. Karoline had dedicated herself to Trump, but at this moment Grayson caught a flicker of hesitation in her expression. His grin widened. "What's wrong, Miss Leavitt? Frozen already?" he taunted, his voice carrying across the room. "I'll give you 3 minutes to prove you're more than just MAGA's loudspeaker. Play, or admit you can't, and leave here in disgrace." He folded his arms, his wine glass tilting slightly in his grasp, his eyes fixed on her with a challenge. "This is over." Laughter and cheers erupted, washing over the room like a tidal wave. A young man, likely one of Grayson's assistants, shouted, "Play or run back to Trump." A woman, phone raised, chuckled, "This is going to be the best clip of the night." The atmosphere pressed down on Karoline, the weight of expectation, doubt and eager anticipation thickening the air. Every gaze bore into her, some filled with curiosity, others with smug satisfaction, waiting for her to falter. Her pulse quickened, not just from frustration but from the knowledge that failure would mean this video spreading like wildfire across X, humiliating her and giving Grayson exactly what he wanted. A viral moment at her expense, tarnishing both her reputation and the MAGA movement's image. She exhaled sharply, forcing down the anger threatening to bubble over. Grayson thought he had trapped her, turning her into a spectacle for his circle of elites. But Karoline wasn't here to lose. She had faced worse. CNN cutting her off, relentless reporters twisting her words. But she never backed down. And she wouldn't now. 3 minutes, you said? She replied, her voice steady but cutting, slicing through the laughter. Without waiting for a response, she strode toward the piano, the sharp click of her heels against the stone floor echoing. In the hush that followed, each step was a silent statement. The murmurs faded, replaced by an uneasy curiosity. Grayson leaned against the wall, his smirk unwavering. "Play," he murmured, his tone now a final challenge. "Show us what you've got, if anything." He took a slow sip of wine, his expression unbothered, as if the outcome was already decided. Karoline halted before the grand piano, the chandelier's glow reflecting off its polished ebony surface. She could feel every set of eyes on her. From Grayson's mocking gaze to the cameras recording her every move. It had been nearly 10 years since she last played, but deep within her, the part of her that once dreamed beneath the roofs of Atkinson still remained. She met Grayson's stare, her expression unwavering. "You want me to play?" She spoke, her voice low yet charged with unwavering strength. "Fine, but don't regret it." Taking a deep breath, she forced down the frustration simmering inside her. Grayson believed he had cornered her, reduced her to nothing more than a spectacle for this elite liberal audience. But she wasn't one to surrender. A memory surfaced, her days at Atkinson Academy when Mrs. Harper had guided her hands over the piano keys, teaching her America the Beautiful. "Play with your heart, Karoline," she had said, "and they'll listen." That moment flickered in her mind like a small flame, a reminder of who she was before Fox News, before the White House, before politics had consumed every part of her identity. "Play, Miss Leavitt," Grayson called out, his voice ringing sharply through the gradually quieting room. "Or are you afraid of embarrassing Trump in front of us?" His smirk widened as he raised a hand, inviting more laughter from the crowd. "Who wants to bet she runs?" A few cheers broke out. Karoline felt the heat rise in her face. They didn't just want to see her fail. They wanted her humiliated, dismantled, turned into living proof of the inferiority they assigned to conservatives. But then, through the whirlwind of emotions, another memory surfaced. Her high school graduation, the weight of the piano keys beneath her fingers, the swell of America the Beautiful filling the room, her family's proud faces as she took her bow. She had stood on that stage with confidence once, and she would not let Grayson take that from her now. If he had set out to humiliate her, he had picked the wrong opponent. She clenched her jaw, her blue eyes flashing with defiance. 3 minutes, right? Her tone was steady, cold, slicing through the lingering laughter. Without waiting for a reply, She pulled out the piano bench, the wood scraping against the floor with a deliberate finality. The room tensed, murmurs fading into a charged silence. Karoline placed her hands lightly on the ivory keys, the cool surface sending a faint current through her fingertips. The grand Washington, D.C. gala room fell still, broken only by hushed breaths and the occasional clink of wine glasses. A few steps away, Elliot Grayson stood watching, arms crossed, his self-satisfied smirk gleaming in his eyes as if he had already predicted her downfall. "Play, Miss Leavitt," he said smoothly, his voice laced with mockery. 3 minutes. "Don't disappoint us if you can even manage that." Karoline ignored him, shutting her eyes briefly as she steadied herself against the storm of emotions swirling in her mind. Mrs. Harper's voice from Atkinson Academy echoed once more. "Play. With your heart, Karoline." She opened her eyes, focusing on the black and white keys before her. Nearly a decade had passed since she last played, but her hands remembered. It was a buried instinct, now awakened by pressure and pride. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the first key. A single clear note rang out, cutting through the air like a statement of intent. She began with America the Beautiful, the very piece she had performed at her high school graduation in New Hampshire. A song deeply tied to the values she had grown up with. The opening notes were slow, hesitant, as if testing how much she still had in her. The piano's tone was soft, slightly uncertain, mirroring the nerves that still lingered within her. A few snickers rippled through the crowd. A man in a gray suit leaned toward his companion and muttered, "See? Told you she couldn't play." Grayson smirked, taking a slow sip of his wine, his expression radiating smug satisfaction. "I was right all along." But then, like embers catching fire, Karoline found her rhythm. Her left hand joined in, adding depth and harmony, and the music began to take shape, rich and full. She remembered Mrs. Harper's lessons, how to make each note tell a story. The melody of America the Beautiful grew stronger, the vibrations of each key carrying through the vast room. The snickering faded into silence. The woman in the red dress, still recording, lowered her phone slightly, her expression shifting from amusement to disbelief. Karoline didn't hesitate. She let her emotions take over, her hands moving with newfound confidence, as if the years away from the piano had been nothing but a brief pause. The Steinway responded flawlessly, its warm tones filling the room. From deep, resonant bass notes that pulsed like the earth's heartbeat to high, bell-like tones that soared through the air. This wasn't just a performance. It was a declaration. A reaffirmation of who she was, of New Hampshire, of the conservative values that Grayson and this crowd so eagerly dismissed. Her shoulders swayed slightly with the rhythm, her blonde hair tied high, moving gently with each motion. And for the first time that night, a small, confident smile played on Karoline's lips, as if she had rediscovered a part of herself through the music. The energy in the room shifted. An older man, possibly a musician, leaned forward and whispered to his companion, "She's actually good." A woman with a champagne glass paused mid-sip, her lips parting in astonishment. Not everyone was willing to acknowledge what was happening. A few in the corner, staunch liberals, crossed their arms, their expressions tight with resistance, unwilling to admit that this MAGA girl had talent. Yet most of the audience couldn't look away, drawn in as if by some unseen force. Grayson wasn't smiling anymore. The wine glass in his hand stilled, his fingers tightening around the stem. His eyes flickered between doubt and something dangerously close to confusion. He stepped closer, as if trying to uncover some deception. But there was no trickery here. Karoline played with the skill of a true artist, her fingers gliding effortlessly over the keys, the product of years of practice. She drove the piece toward its climax, adding an unexpected flourish. Deep, resonant bass notes like rolling thunder interwoven with high, piercing tones like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The sound reverberated through the room, shaking the floor subtly, causing a few wine glasses on nearby tables to tremble. She wasn't just playing to prove Grayson wrong. She played for herself, for the days at Atkinson Academy when she had dreamed of being a musician, for the family that had once sat in church, beaming with pride as she performed, and for Mrs. Harper, who had always believed she could be something great. Each note was a reflection of that journey. The girl from New Hampshire who had chosen politics over music, now blending both in a way no one had expected. Her eyes blazed with pride, not with tears, but with the strength of someone who refuses to yield. As the final strains of America the Beautiful filled the air, Karoline slowed, letting each note linger, deep and resonant, like the closing lines of a heartfelt story. She struck the last key, the sound hanging in the silence before, fading completely. No one moved. No one spoke. The room stood still, unwilling to break the moment. Grayson, now just a few steps away, gripped his wine glass tightly, his face caught in a war between shock, embarrassment, and something dangerously close to fear. He had meant to make her a spectacle, a laughingstock. Instead, she had turned the tables, leaving him the fool before the entire room. Karoline rose, sliding the bench back with a deliberate, controlled motion. Karoline turned to Grayson, her icy blue eyes locking onto his with unwavering precision. "Your 3 minutes," she said, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Hope you enjoyed the show." Without waiting for a reply, she gave the crowd a slight nod, an artist acknowledging her audience, then straightened, tall, proud, as if she had never been shaken. Applause erupted, crashing through the Washington, D.C. gala room like a wave. The sound vibrated off the marble walls, ringing against the dazzling crystal chandeliers. Karoline Leavitt stood motionless beside the Steinway, her cold blue gaze sweeping across the room. A small but undeniable smile curved her lips. She had done more than just play. She had turned Elliot Grayson's cruel challenge into an undeniable victory. The energy in the room had shifted. Those who had mocked her, those who had simply been curious to watch her fail, now felt the weight of what had just happened. The applause slowly faded, but the tension in the air remained taut, like a piano string stretched to its limit. Every gaze was locked on her, and on Grayson. He stood a few steps away, his red wine glass still in hand, but it no longer swayed with the ease of a man in control. The smug grin that had once danced on his lips was gone, replaced by something far more complicated. Surprise, confusion, and perhaps, just beneath the surface, a flicker of shame. He cleared his throat, as if trying to gather himself, trying to reclaim the aura of the powerful tech millionaire. But when he spoke, the smooth confidence in his voice was gone. "I have to admit, Miss Leavitt," he said, hesitating as if the words tasted bitter in his mouth, "I underestimated you. Maybe. You're not just Trump's loudspeaker like I thought." The concession was reluctant, dry, clinging to the last shreds of his pride. Karoline didn't reply. She simply held his gaze, her expression unreadable, as if to say, "I don't need your approval." Before Grayson could say more, movement from the crowd drew both their attention. An older man stepped forward, still clapping lightly, as if reluctant to let the moment pass. Dressed in a simple gray suit, he carried himself with quiet authority. When he spoke, his deep, warm voice commanded attention. "Young lady, that was an outstanding performance," he said, his tone clear and genuine. "I'm James Whitaker, former conductor for the local symphony. You've got a natural gift. Turning America the Beautiful into a statement takes true skill," the older man said, his eyes gleaming with admiration. Karoline gave a slight nod, feeling a rare warmth amid the otherwise tense atmosphere. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice steady but laced with quiet pride. The crowd stirred. A few guests stepped closer, their curiosity piqued. A middle-aged woman in an elegant black dress spoke up. "Where did you learn to play? I've never heard that piece performed with such intensity." Another attendee, his sharp gaze and recording phone revealing him as a journalist, interjected, "Are you returning to music? This is newsworthy." Karoline remained composed, but inside a wave of emotion surged. She hadn't anticipated her response to Grayson's challenge would garner this level of attention. Applause still rippled through the room, and an older man's voice rang out once more. "Brilliant." Absolutely brilliant. Yet not everyone was impressed. In the corner, a group of skeptics stood with arms crossed, whispering among themselves. A younger man, likely one of Grayson's aides, muttered just loudly enough for her to hear. So she plays. Big deal. She's still just another MAGA fanatic. Another woman, swirling champagne in her glass, smirked. Must have been luck. But those dismissive remarks were soon overshadowed by a commanding voice. Miss Leavitt, I'd like a word. A woman with sharp eyes and neatly tied brown hair stepped forward. It was Amanda Carter, a prominent conservative donor and former associate of Elise Stefanik, someone Karoline had worked with in the past. This performance deserves a larger stage. What would you think about playing at CPAC? We need moments like this to show the world that conservatism isn't just about politics. The proposal caught Karoline off guard, but the idea resonated with her. She nodded thoughtfully. I'll consider it, she replied, her tone firm. Meanwhile, murmurs spread through the crowd. It's already trending on X, watch it go viral, someone called out. Another guest, laughing while waving their phone, added, This is a knockout for the liberals. Karoline allowed herself a faint smile. If this gained traction among her supporters, the impact would be far greater than simply silencing Grayson. She could already imagine the comments. Karoline's a legend and liberal elites taken down. The thought filled her with a deep sense of satisfaction. Grayson, now sidelined, attempted to reclaim control of the room. Raising his voice slightly, he said, All right, everyone. She played well, I'll give her that. But let's not get carried away. This was all in good fun. But the energy in the room had already shifted, and for the first time that evening, Grayson was no longer the center of attention. Grayson shrugged, feigning indifference, but the tight grip on his wine glass betrayed his unease. Karoline turned to him, her gaze unwavering. Your fun just crashed and burned. She took a deliberate step closer, her voice quiet but razor sharp. Next time, choose your opponent more wisely. The crowd erupted into laughter, this time at Grayson's expense. His face reddened. As he stood there, momentarily at a loss for words, James Whitaker, the conductor, stepped forward again. Miss Leavitt, if you're interested, I could connect you with some community music programs, he offered warmly. Talent like this shouldn't go to waste. It could inspire so many. For the first time, Karoline truly considered it, not as a political move, but as something for herself. Thank you, she replied, her tone measured. I'll think about it. Whitaker handed her a business card. She accepted it, feeling as though a door she had long shut was beginning to open again. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Karoline lingered by the piano, her fingertips brushing over the keys one last time. A deep sense of pride settled in, not just for outmaneuvering Grayson, but for reclaiming a part of herself she had abandoned for nearly a decade. Music, once an impractical luxury, had revealed itself as a powerful tool, just as potent as her speeches on Capitol Hill. She thought of Trump, Elise Stefanik, and the supporters on X. They would take pride in this moment, turning a challenge from the liberal elite into a conservative triumph. Amanda Carter had been right. This wasn't just a performance, it was a statement, and it belonged on a bigger stage. Grayson slipped quietly away, vanishing into the sea of evening gowns and tailored suits, his wine glass still clutched like a symbol of defeat. Karoline watched him go, not with satisfaction, but with certainty. He wouldn't forget this night, and neither would she. As she left the gala room, the echoes of applause still rang in her mind. The victory over Elliot Grayson shone in her eyes, the weight of the moment settling in. Later, back in her Washington, D.C. apartment, her phone screen glowed with notifications. The America the Beautiful performance had gone viral across MAGA circles. Comments flooded in. Karoline just knocked out the liberals, and this is real conservative strength. She sank onto the sofa, scanning the messages, a faint smile playing on her lips. But deep down, it wasn't just about silencing Grayson. It was about reconnecting with music, something she had buried for far too long. The next morning, her phone rang. The caller ID flashed a familiar name, Donald Trump. Karoline, I saw the video. His voice boomed, full of energy. You made us proud. You've got to play at CPAC. Show the country MAGA folks don't just talk, they deliver. Karoline let out a small laugh, pride swelling in her chest like a rising tide. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll do it, she replied, her voice steady. Trump's invitation wasn't just a political opportunity. It was confirmation that music could become a new part of her conservative mission. She envisioned herself on the CPAC stage, fingers gliding over the keys, applause erupting from thousands of supporters. The thought sent a thrill through her. Determined, she started practicing again. At the White House, she found a quiet corner with an old upright piano used by staff during breaks. At first, her fingers faltered, missing beats, the occasional sour note breaking the silence. But as she played, memories of lessons with Mrs. Harper and Atkinson resurfaced like a familiar melody. She began with America the Beautiful, then added, How Great Thou Art, the hymn she had once played in a New Hampshire Catholic church. Each note felt like a tether to her past, to her family, to the version of herself before politics consumed everything. She played during lunch breaks, sometimes late into the evening after the office had emptied. Day by day, her hands regained their old agility. The most unexpected support came from Elliot Grayson. A few days after the gala, a delivery arrived at the White House, a grand Steinway baby grand piano. A handwritten note was attached. Miss Leavitt, this is my apology. Use it well. Grayson Karoline arched an eyebrow, instantly skeptical. She knew Grayson wasn't the type to admit defeat so easily. This was a PR move, a transparent attempt to repair his tarnished reputation, after becoming a viral laughingstock on X. Still, she wouldn't refuse it. Thank him, she told her assistant coolly, but I'll use it my way. The piano was placed in a small White House meeting room, and it quickly became part of her daily routine. Each evening after the workday had ended, she played, turning it into a symbol of her triumph over Grayson. Then came a call from Amanda Carter, the conservative donor who had first suggested CPAC. We've set the date, Amanda announced, excitement buzzing in her voice. You'll perform at CPAC, and I want to add a charity event in New Hampshire. Give kids a chance to learn piano, like you did with Mrs. Harper. Karoline agreed without hesitation. She imagined children in Atkinson, growing up in conservative families like hers, pressing their fingers to the keys, finding the same joy she once had. This wasn't just about returning to music. It was about leaving a lasting mark, not just for herself, but for the community she represented. As she practiced, she realized that music and politics weren't opposing forces, as she had once believed. Instead, music embodied the very core of conservative values: pride, faith, and resilience against adversity. She began experimenting, adding flourishes to America the Beautiful, weaving it with hymns, crafting a style that was both powerful and deeply emotive. Sometimes she left the meeting room door open while she played. A few White House staffers would pause, listening in quiet admiration. One nodded and murmured, "You make me think of home." That made her smile. Her music wasn't just hers. It belonged to everyone who shared the values she fought for. One afternoon, she sat at the new Steinway playing for Nicholas and their son. The boy giggled, clapping to the beat while Nicholas nodded in quiet admiration. "You know," he said, "when you play, I see all of New Hampshire in it, the way you grew up, the way you never give up." Karoline paused, met his gaze, and smiled. "That's what I want," she replied. "Music is how I tell our story, not just for you, but for everyone." As she prepared for CPAC and the charity event, Amanda called again. "The gala video has over 1 million views now. MAGA's calling you the piano hero." Karoline laughed, but deep down, she knew this wasn't just a viral moment. It was the beginning of something bigger, a way to connect with supporters, her family, and most importantly, herself. Grayson might have sent the piano out of shame, but she would use it to amplify her voice in ways he never imagined. She pressed a single key, the note ringing through the quiet room, and thought, this isn't just a comeback, it's a step forward. Year after that fateful Washington, D.C. gala, Karoline Leavitt stood on a small stage at the Atkinson, New Hampshire Community Center. Soft lights bathed the Steinway Baby Grand, the unexpected gift from Elliot Grayson, now transformed into a symbol of her victory. This was her first charity concert, dedicated to the children of her hometown. The room was packed. Parents, political allies, and dozens of wide-eyed kids sitting cross-legged on the carpet. Dressed simply in blue, her blonde hair tied high, a gentle smile lighting her face, she wasn't just the White House press secretary. She was Atkinson's Karoline, the girl who once dreamed at the Keys. This concert was the legacy she wanted to leave. After CPAC, where she had performed for thousands and earned Trump's praise, she had turned Nicholas's idea into reality. She raised funds for pianos in New Hampshire community centers, opening free music classes for conservative kids. Music is power, she told them before beginning to play. Use it to tell your stories. A little girl raised her hand, curiosity shining in her eyes. Do you play for fun? Karoline smiled. I play so you know you can do anything. The gala video had exploded into a MAGA icon, surpassing 2 million views on X, dubbed the Moment Karoline. Crushed the liberal elite. It became a symbol of conservative resilience. But to her, it was more than politics. It was proof that music, something she had abandoned for Trump, could bridge her back to her roots and inspire the next generation. As the final note lingered, warm applause erupted, filling the room. Karoline stood, bowing gracefully, her gaze sweeping across every face, from her mother, who had taught her faith, to the children who would carry her dream forward. She thought of Mrs. Harper, the high school teacher who had once believed she was destined for greatness. Would she be proud now? Karoline hadn't become the professional pianist of her youthful dreams, but she had done something even greater, used music to keep the conservative flame alive, proving that talent and faith could overcome any prejudice. Liberal millionaire challenges Karoline Leavitt to play piano at a party, hoping to humiliate her. Instead, her talent stuns the room, exposing the deep political and social polarization that divides America today, where conservative and liberal values clash fiercely, whether in elite gatherings, social media, or the public eye. Her showdown. With Elliot Grayson, a progressive millionaire emblematic of the liberal upper class, turned into an unexpected triumph. America the Beautiful became more than just a song. It became a statement. In a country where political ideology shapes not just opinions but how people perceive talent and worth, her viral videos on X and the flood of MAGA praise highlighted the power of social media to transform personal moments into cultural movements. Karoline's journey, abandoning music for politics, then reclaiming it to inspire New Hampshire kids, raises an important question. How do we balance personal passion with societal duty in a high-stakes world? The lesson from this story is clear. Never let others' biases limit your potential. When Grayson tried to humiliate Karoline, she didn't back down. She turned the moment into an opportunity, using the piano to tell her own story, a powerful reminder that talent and conviction can rise above mockery. Her charity concert for conservative kids wasn't just about music. It was about turning personal experience into community strength, fighting not just for oneself, but for future generations. In a divided America, be like Karoline. Stand firm, play your song, and let it ring out. If you loved Karoline's journey, from the keys to victory, hit subscribe so you don't miss more inspiring stories like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.